1350. I'm obsessed with that number, and it's why I'm obsessed with it is it's a right-wing number that they love to talk about when they talk about crime, okay? Because the ultimate goal of the number 1350 is to link the black people existing with their need for criminality. They're just criminals. No reason why. Well, they actually don't have a reason. They'll end up, if you drill them and say, okay, well, why would 1350, why are you so focused on that number? Because they're trying to tell you black people are inherent violent. If all things equal, you put black people in a vacuum, they'll just go to violence inherently because they're violent. They're violent people. And then so you'll ask, hey, well, why is this? And then they just shrug their shoulders and be like, well, I don't know, a cultural, and then they'll be like fatherlessness and hip hop music. You know what I mean? Like, so, okay, so because your skin is brown, you have no father, and you listen to hip hop, you're going to be a criminal. They were saying this before hip hop existed, mind you, but whatever. So inherently, you're just going to do crime, and you try to drill. Hey, why would someone just do crime? It's really all about trying to make you associate looking at a black person with them being a criminal. And then let's take it a step further. Why would I want to do that? It means now whatever I do to them afterwards, who cares? Because they're a criminal. Maybe I want to step on their neck for 9 minutes straight until they run out of air. Maybe I want to shoot them dead over a routine traffic stop. Maybe I want to go overboard because they're speeding. Maybe they stole something, money from the store, and I want to start firing in the streets and having a high-speed chase because I'm justifying, wow, these are criminal masterminds. So everything we do now is justified. So any over excessive brutality, force you see against these people, doesn't matter. They're criminals anyway, and they deserve that punishment. It's a way of dehumanizing. So 1350 is specifically to dehumanize black people. So when you see a black person, you go, oh, criminal. That's what it's for. But the thing about 1350, the reason it works is because people who want to believe that, they want to believe it anyway. What are they saying? They're saying 13% of violent population does 50% of violent crime, 50% of violent crime convicted. Now, you got to understand that it's very important that they use 50%. 50% is the linchpin. Oh, 50%. So it makes, because what they're trying to do is say, they're trying to make it seem like 50% of black people are violent. They're trying to make it seem like not something more than what it is. But really, 1350 would be true if 10 murders were done in America and 5 of them were done by black people and 5 of them were done by white people. You could still say 1350. Now, I'm making an extreme case because I'm trying to make the point, well, how many murders would it take to make someone inherently violent? Okay, so I'm being very extremely low, right? I'm saying, oh, well, what if there's 10 murders and half were done by black people? Okay, let's up it. What if 1,000 murders were done and 500 were by black people? Would that make them inherently, 500 murders being done by black people make them inherently violent? I mean, it depends on how many black people there are in America, right? You know, currently there's approximately 40 million of them in America. So then I again ask the question, how many murders of your 1350? Okay, because again, if I said there's 500 murders, 250 are done by black people, you could still trot out that argument as a right winger. You could still say the same thing. 1350. You could still say it. So then I ask the question, if you're really trying to be honest, how many murders would it take for black people to be inherently violent, where you're like, a black person is just inherently violent, right? You know what I mean? Like, what if 1% of the population of black people did violent crime? Would that mean black people are inherently violent if 1 out of 100 of them did violent crimes? Would that mean how many? So that's where I'm interested in. How much percentage of a black person doing a violent crime would you have to say, oh, black people are inherently violent. They're inherently prone to crime. How many percentage of the people, right? If 50% of black people go to jail. But the reality is, again, there's 40 million people, and the 1350. Okay, so I'm making extremely low. I'm saying 500. What if I upped it to 1,000 and 500 people out of 40 million were murderers? What if I made it all the way to the number of what it actually is, which is about 20,000 violent crimes, right? And 10,000 of them done. So half of those 20,000 are done by black people. Okay, 20,000 crimes, and half of them are just, so you could say 1350. You're right. Okay, half of them are done. But so, okay, but to take that number and then make the next leap to say, oh, that means that black people are inherently violent because 10,000 murders happened out of a population of 40 million. Right, and we're talking about 10,000 murders. We're not talking about 10,000 individual suspects. It's not like every single one of those is a single murder. A lot of those are going to be multiple murders. That's just how murder works, and that's how violent crime works. Sometimes there's going to be pockets of people who do multiple crimes that make up for more of those crimes in that 10,000 number. So you might have 7,000 perpetrators. You could even have as low as 5,000 or 3,000 perpetrators responsible for 10,000 crimes. It's not that big a stretch to imagine that. You know what I'm saying? And if it was 10,000 individuals, you could argue that some of those were just mistakes, right? Some people are inherently violent. No one's going to deny that. And some people are going to do multiple crimes. And that's in the 10,000. Some of those people, that's going to be what some of those people are. So you're now taking the 10,000 crimes and you're reducing it down to about 7,000 individuals who are doing the crime. And then again, you're taking 7,000 individuals and you're mapping it against a population of 40 million. And then you're taking that conclusion and say, well, they're inherently violent because of hip hop. And that's not even of a population of 40 million people. You need 400,000 of them to be violent to have just a percentage of them be violent. What you have is 7,000. So you could do the math of what 7,000 is as a percentage of 40 million, but it's not a lot. So taking that 1350, that's why it's so important for them to say 1350%, because no leftist ever asked, well, how many actual murders is that? Okay, you're saying 50%. Well, how many murders is it actually? Is it 20,000 murders? Is it no? It's usually going to hover around 20,000 murders for the entire population of violent crimes, the type of crimes they're talking about. And then again, if you're doing 1350, you have to cut it in half, 10,000 of those for black people, and then you're going to have to pare that down again because you're talking about violent individuals, because you're trying to say that black people are inherently violent and so many. But you're saying because 7,000 people do crimes, 40 million people must now bear the brunt of being inherently violent and being and right wingers. Oh, black people are twice as likely to do crime because 7,000 of them do crimes, and out of 40 million, it makes no sense. But this argument is never approached in this way. Actually study the statistics of how many violent crimes actually happen. Actually look at the population of black people in the country, and you'll see that the number would never warrant in any scientific measure, any sporting event. If you had 40 million free throws and you hit 10,000 of them, you would not be considered a good free throw. It'd almost be like you didn't hit any. I mean, I know people it's hard to wrap their head around 10,000 out of 40 million, but you would never come to the conclusion, oh, they're inherently violent, unless you wanted to come to that conclusion and you had that before you even said the statistic anyway. So it's very important that they remain that it's 1350, and then it's very important that you don't actually dig into that and say, well, how many actual murders are there? And how many black people are there for you to now jump to the next conclusion where, oh, they're inherently violent? It's a ridiculous statistic. And honestly, bringing that statistic up in the first place is just telling your opposition that you do have racial biases. And then it's very important to you that black people be associated with criminality right off the bat. It's very important to you as a human being that when you need to convince other human beings that, hey, when you see black people, they're actually very criminal. And so if you want to hurt them or shoot them or do violent things to them, I know I'm not the violent one. They are. So anything you do it's like stopping a pest. You know what I mean? It's like you're not a murderer if you kill roaches. They're going to eat all you know, it's the same. It's like trying to say, hey, they're inherently going to do wrong. So any preemptive action you take towards them is totally fine because 1350. That's the need for that statistic. That's why it exists. That's why they perpetuate it. And I'm not sure why leftists don't debunk it. You know, I'm not a debate bro, but I mean, it seems clear to me if you actually just dig into the numbers of how many black people there are and how many people are charged with crimes, and then pair that with, oh, how does that low number of actual crimes versus the entire population? It's like, if anything, it should lead you to say, well, where are these crimes happening? How can we fix up those areas? And because usually the crimes are going to be happening in economically low areas as well as being black, right? But mostly black and brown people tend to, you know, be socioeconomically lower on the ladder. So their neighborhoods are always going to be more prone to crime. That's like, if you want to pretend that poverty and criminality aren't paired together, and you want to go, like it's just something inherently about like listening to hip hop. It's usually about trying to get money. And usually the people who do crimes don't have tons of opportunity. A lot of the time, rich people aren't the ones that are doing petty crimes. You know what I mean? They might do financial crimes, white collar crimes, but they're not doing the same type of crimes. Why? Because they don't have access to the same type of criminality. Even rich people, like someone like Bernie Madoff, he's not going to do the same type of crime as someone from the hood. Why? Because Bernie Madoff has more access to different types of criminality because of his privilege. Is anyone trying to deny that? Would anyone say, oh no, there's a reason Bernie Madoff can steal billions, and the black people that are demonized on television, if they do steal, it's thousands of dollars. It's usually things that they have to run away from the cops. You know what I mean? It's not things where like FBI has to investigate their financial and look through the documents. You know what I mean? Like it's totally different type of criminality. So it's just, when you hear that statistic, if anything, it's just, you already know what this person's all about. So that's kind of just where I leave it at that. That's where I leave the 1350. And that's why I'm so obsessed, because I just don't know why people let that statistic ride and don't confront it in a proper way.